analyst in the U.S. Government Publishing Office's Library Services and Content Management Unit. Suzanne's team develops and manages GPO's official partnerships and manages the digitization of historic content. Suzanne joined the GPO in 2002 as a cataloger and has been working with GPO partners since 2005. Prior to joining GPO, Suzanne was a government documents librarian at Louisiana State University. Suzanne holds a master's in library science and an MA in history from Indiana University. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be at Indiana Government Information Day and to be back in Indiana. As Jennifer alluded to, I got my first taste of government documents opening depository boxes at Jennifer's library and then working at the IU Wells Library under the great Lou Malcolm. As Jennifer said, my name is Suzanne Ibanez, and my team and I coordinate all of GPO's official partnerships. Today, I'll be sharing information about the National Collection of U.S. Government Public Information and about the United States Government Publishing Office's collaborations and how we use them to increase access to and preserve the National Collection. The work of these partners benefits other members of the Federal Depository Library community and all users of government information. So today I'll share a high-level overview of the National Collection of U.S. Government Public Information, as well as what exactly GPO official partnerships are. I'll then talk about how our partners impact access to the National Collection, both tangible and digital, as well as how our partners help to preserve the National Collection. So let's get started. While the term National Collection of Government Public Information, and it's a mouthful, is fairly new, the National Collection has been in place for over 2 centuries. Federal depository libraries have worked in partnership with GPO and federal agencies for decades and more to provide the public with no fee access to federal government information in all formats. There is no other part of the information landscape set up to deal with the nation's government information needs on such a local level. While federal agencies have its own specific constituencies that it serves, and those groups are generally narrowly focused, and many times the agency is only able to supply the most current information. The Federal Depository Library Program is the primary means for the general public to gain access at no fee to all types of government information. So with that background, what is the National Collection and where do you locate it? All public information products of the United States government, regardless of format or medium, produced by federal employees or paid for with federal funds is part of the National Collection. The National Collection is not housed in Washington, D.C. at GPO. Rather, it is the geographically dispersed collection of the corpus of federal government public information that is accessible to the public at no fee. Federal depository libraries are the stewards of all the material distributed in tangible format throughout the history of the FDLP. While digital content is housed at GPO's GovInfo repository, as well as content we've harvested from agency websites and content hosted on federal agency websites. Large parts of the National Collection are found right here in the State Library and as well as every depository in Indiana. The ongoing development, maintenance, and preservation of the National Collection is critical to providing free, ready, and permanent public access to federal government information now and for future generations. Since the beginning of the digital transition in the late 1990s, GPO has been creating official partnerships with libraries and other federal agencies to share the tasks of building, storing, disseminating, and preserving a collection of FDLP digital resources. And the concept of partnerships was built on that successful model of the distributed national collection of tangible FDLP materials I just mentioned. We knew early on that GPO could not preserve or provide access to all of the digital federal government information on its own. Initially, partnerships focused on providing permanent public access to digital content not housed on GPO Access, and one of those first partnerships was right here in Indiana with the IU Floppy Disk Project. or providing access to services for federal depository libraries. And some of us who've been around a long time may remember things like the enhanced shipping list service. Official partnerships are formalized by memorandums of agreement that outlines the terms of the partnership and the responsibilities of each partner, and are signed by the superintendent of documents and the director or dean at the partner institution. Between the late 1990s and 2005, we had developed 17 partnerships. Today, we have 79 across 6 categories. We've had a big growth in the number of partnerships since 2005, and our partners have become even more central to the work of GPO and the management of the National Collection. Our 79 partners each contribute to different aspects of the National Collection, so to provide an organizational framework, we created 6 categories of official GPO partnerships. The one you may have heard most about in recent years is preservation stewards. They make a commitment to retain specified tangible depository resources for the length of the partnership agreement. They also take on additional responsibilities for preserving that material. Digital preservation stewards make a similar commitment, but to digital resources. They retain and make publicly accessible at no fee digital resources within scope of the FDLP. They also take on the additional responsibilities for preserving that material. Digital preservation stewards repositories infrastructure, governance, and digital object management must meet a set of criteria based on international standards and best practices. GPO does not archive resources under digital stewardship. Instead, we direct users to the resources via bibliographic records and pearls in the CGP. In the event the steward is no longer able to retain or make the resources publicly accessible, the steward transfers copies of the resources and the metadata to GPO. Digital content contributors, on the other hand, provide digital content to GPO for ingest into GovInfo. The contributors provide content that meets our specifications, and GPO then provides ongoing access and preservation. Digital access partners make a commitment to make publicly accessible digital resources within scope of the National Collection at no fee. Like digital preservation stewards, GPO directs users to the resources at the partner site via bibliographic records in the CGP and pearls. And likewise, in the event the digital access partner is no longer able to provide or make the resources publicly available, the partner transfers copies to us. Cataloging and metadata contributors assist GPO with providing bibliographic data or serials holding information for historic and unreported publications that are not currently accessible in the CGP or for which we only have minimal records. No publications, either digital or tangible, are exchanged in this type of partnership. And the final category is really just a catch-all for anything that doesn't fit nicely into one of the other 5 categories. So we'll consider all partnership proposals from a federal depository library, a federal agency, or any interested institution that supports free public access to federal government information. So here's a chart that shows the distribution of our active partnerships across those partnership categories, and we don't currently have any in the other category. There are 52 libraries serving as preservation stewards, 2 libraries working with us on cataloging currently, 1 digital preservation steward, the University of North Texas, and 17 libraries and agencies providing access to content as digital access partners. And finally, we have 7 libraries providing content into GovInfo right now. Of those 79 partnerships, 4 are right here in Indiana. The State Library is a preservation steward and a digital content contributor, while Jennifer's Library, the Indiana University Maurer School of Law, Jerome Hall Law Library, and the University of Notre Dame Kresge Law Library are both preservation stewards. And I'll talk a little bit more about the contribution of these 3 institutions in a little bit. So with that overview of the National Collection and an explanation of official partnerships, I want to break down how our partnerships help libraries and the public by increasing access to the National Collection. By inventorying and cataloging an FDLP collection, our partners directly contribute to identifying the materials that constitute the National Collection and making them accessible. Like many libraries, GPO began using OCLC in July of 1975. As a result, the material produced after that date is usually easy to find in our catalog or in the catalog of any federal depository library. However, you all have a lot of wonderful historic material on your shelves that dates before 1975, and so it's not as easy to locate for users. Librarians know to check the print indexes, such as the monthly catalog and the 1909 checklist, but this can be a blocker for many users as well as for non-documents librarians and staff. There are a few ways our partners are working to bridge that bibliographic records gap. Partners contribute bibliographic records or metadata for processing and ingest into the CGP. GPO creates bibliographic records for uncatalogued U.S. government publications, including researching Superintendent of Documents classification numbers and partner collections. Those records are then contributed to the CGP as well as to the partner. GPO also creates bibliographic records for digital content available from a partner for which a partner is submitting to GovInfo, along with a URL so that the users can head right to the content. So let me highlight a few partnerships that are helping us increase access to the National Collection by increasing the number of bibliographic records in the CGP. In 2019, the University of Minnesota Libraries and GPO started to work together to catalog publications of several ceased U.S. federal government agencies. The Office of Education in the Department of the Interior, I-16, for those who speak SUDOC, Department of the Navy, SUDOC Class N, and War Department, SUDOC Class W. The University of Minnesota Library staff scanned title pages and provided metadata elements and distribution information to GPO, and our cataloging staff created new records or adapted existing records in OCLC and in the CGP. We completed this project in June 2023 and added 922 records to the CGP and the University of Minnesota's catalog. We've been working with the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis since 2005 to ensure that there are bibliographic records for content within scope of the National Collection in the Federal Reserve Archival System for Economic Research, or FRASER. 2,115 records have been added to the CGP to date, and this number continues to grow as the FRASER staff sends me notifications of new content every quarter. The Colorado School of Mines created records for electronic versions of publications from various USGS series, such as bulletins, circulars, water supply papers, professional papers. GPO then enhanced the records by verifying the SUDOC number, performing authority work to subject headings and corporate names. And this partnership has added over 13,700 records to the CGP. You can access these records and all partner contributed bibliographic records through the CGP. You're also welcome to download these and any of our records for use in your own catalog. There are 4 ways to get copies of these records. Everything we catalog is in OCLC. You can also download records via Z39.50. And the final 2 options may not be as familiar to you, and one of them is very new, which Scott mentioned it this morning. We post a monthly file of new and changed bibliographic records to our GitHub repository, as well as some topic-based record sets. And finally, the records are part of the FDLP data manager. Records can be downloaded in .mrc format from there, and filters are available to limit record sets, including by your selection profile. Like with cataloging, we rely on partners to help make the historic portions of the National Collection more visible to users. As librarians and library staff, we know that there are great resources in our stacks, but having those resources available in a digital format, accessible from a laptop or a tablet, makes them more likely to be seen and used. In my other role at GPO, I oversee our efforts to digitize the historic National Collection, which, as you all know, is pretty massive. So I'm well aware that my team and I could never digitize every publication ourselves. We need our partners to help by digitizing parts of their collections and giving us those files, or as I will discuss shortly, making the files accessible themselves. By contributing digitally reformatted content to GovInfo, partners help to make that content more accessible, but also to preserve the digital files for now and into the future. Partners, so how does it work? Partners share digitally imaged content according to GPO specifications, which at a high level is a JPEG 2000 master image file and a PDFA 2B access file with embedded OCR, which is in line with the national standards. GPO then provides public access as well as ongoing preservation. Bibliographic records, either provided by the partner or created by GPO, are used in GovInfo as well as the CGP. And you can spot partner content in GovInfo. If you look at the details page, you'll see a note acknowledging the contribution of the partner. Because GovInfo is more than just a website, we can ensure access and preservation at the same time. In addition to providing an advanced metadata-powered search experience, GovInfo also includes a content management system and a standards-compliant repository. GPO combines modern search technology with extensive metadata creation to ensure the highest quality search experience. We also securely control digital content throughout its lifecycle to ensure content integrity and authenticity. This includes the application of digital signatures to PDF files, so users can verify documents have not been altered and are the official versions. Additionally, GovInfo is an ISO 16363 certified trustworthy digital repository, and only one of two in the world. So it ensures content is preserved for future generations despite any potential technical failure, aging of hardware, and technology changes. Thanks to our partners, you can access some really cool historic content on GovInfo, and I'll share just a few examples. The United States Congressional Serial Set, and one of my favorite publications, is a compilation of all numbered House and Senate documents and reports, including executive reports and treaty documents, issued for each session of the Congress. It is a treasure trove of primary source material. The Law Library of Congress is digitizing the serial set, and GPO staff create bibliographic metadata at the volume and at the individual report and document level. GPO then provides access and preservation through GovInfo. So far, we've made almost 5,000 volumes available, and there's a lot of Indiana-related documents and reports in the serial set that you and your users might find interesting. Just a couple examples. There's an 1849 resolution of the Indiana General Assembly for a grant of land for Indiana University from the Miami Reservation, or an 1899 USGS publication discussing wells in northern Indiana. The University of Florida has contributed 980 publications related to the Panama Canal. These include newspapers such as the Tropic Times, annual reports of the Panama Canal Commission, Canal Zone Health Department reports, and the Panama Canal Handbook. From the 1913 edition of the handbook, I learned that the Canal Zone had 22 general stores, as well as plants for ice making, a bakery, coffee roasting, and ice cream production. Other partners are digitally imaging on a much smaller scale, such as Boise State University, which is digitizing publications related to the Idaho region, such as a management plan for birds of prey along the Snake River. And finally, the Treasury Department Library contributed a number of financial-related publications, including historic expenditure reports of the United States government and the Official Register of the United States. And if you're not familiar with the Official Register, it's pretty cool because it lists the names and salaries of all federal employees. So I learned the Librarian of Congress, Herbert Putnam, earned $6,500 in 1919. In addition to contributing content to GovInfo, partners help build the national collection by hosting digital content in their own repositories. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, either GPO or the partner can create bibliographic records for digital content hosted by a partner. We then use the bibliographic metadata with the persistent URL to direct users to the content in the partner's repository. We also link to partner repositories from our FDLP site, fdlp.gov. These type of partners include both libraries that have digitized historic content and federal agencies that are making historic and born digital content available. An important part of these partnerships is that GPO serves as the backup. in case the library or agency is no longer able to continue to provide free access. The partner is required under the agreement to provide GPO with the appropriate files and associated metadata so that we can then make it available through GovInfo or another partner. This gives the depository community and users confidence to use and trust that information will be available long-term. So let me shine a light on some interesting portions of the National Collection hosted on partner repositories. The NASA Technical Report Server provides access to NASA metadata, full text online documents, including conference papers, journal articles, meeting papers, patents, research reports, images, movies, and technical videos created or funded by NASA. The Illinois State University digitized a collection of World War I posters created by federal agencies that had been collected by the university's first full-time librarian. The University of North Texas, our only digital preservation steward, has a large collection of digitized U.S. government publications in their digital repository. These include the predecessors of the Congressional Record, government comic books, publications from the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, and much more. Finally, I'm going to mention Fraser again. Fraser is a digital library of U.S. economic, financial, and banking history. The Fraser team seeks a wide range of historic materials related to economic history to digitize and make accessible. You will find some Indiana-related content in Fraser, such as the occupation wage surveys of Indianapolis from the 1950s and 1960s. This is the type of partnership we use, particularly with federal agencies, to get a preservation backup of repositories. In addition to NASA, for example, we have a partnership with the National Renewable Energy Lab, and they notify us of new publications. And we serve as their backup just in case their budget was ever zero funded and they weren't able to provide access any further. Brent and the State Library team are playing an important role in this effort as a digital content contributor. As you know, the State Library has a large and historic collection of federal material. Brent wants to share this collection more widely, and the State Library has the right equipment for digitization. Brent and his team are focusing on the 52 volumes of the decisions of the Department of the Interior and the General Land Office in cases related to public lands. It was published from 1881 to 1929. So far, 5 volumes are on GovInfo, but more. Brent is continuing to scan a new volume every month, so keep your eyes open for more volumes. Our partners are also essential in helping GPO preserve the tangible content of the National Collection. GPO does not have a library collection, so we depend on our partners, preservation stewards, to preserve both the historic National Collection as well as tangible material that is still going out in depository boxes. Preservation stewards will eventually assure that there is one copy of every title in the 4 geographically distributed regions of the FDLP: Northeast, South, Midwest, and West. So think of preservation stewards as kind of the shared print of the National Collection. As libraries, all libraries, as well as non-depository institutions, can serve as preservation stewards. They make a commitment to retain a specified portion of their collection for the length of the partnership agreement. They also take on additional responsibilities for preserving that material. This includes both preventative maintenance and conservation treatments. In addition to responsibilities to preserve the titles, preservation stewards have an inventory and cataloging commitment. For historic titles, the library submits an item-level inventory with a condition assessment to GPO. For current titles, something that we're still distributing, the library confirms receipt of the material via a spreadsheet sent by GPO staff on a semi-annual basis. Libraries ensure that all their preservation stored titles are cataloged, and the bibliographic records contain a retention notation so that all staff are aware the title is under preservation and retention commitments. There are currently publications in over 300 superintendent of document classification numbers being preserved among those 52 preservation stewards. To make it easier for users and the library community to know which publications have a preservation commitment, we are developing a process to automate the creation of item records and holdings in the CGP for preservation stewards. And we're making good progress. There are already some preservation steward holdings in the CGP for large serials that were added by staff manually. With the recent changes to tangible distribution in the FDLP, our focus this year is on obtaining preservation commitments for titles on the print distribution titles list. We're seeking commitment both for the historic issues and for the new content that will be distributed. The commitment to preserving tangible publications is really strong here in Indiana. The Indiana University Jerome Hall Law Library, the State Library, and the University of Notre Dame Kresge Law Library are all preservation stewards. They're preserving a number of important titles, which are on the slide, including the Code of Federal Regulations, the statutes at large, the Federal Register, United States reports, the public papers of the president, the monthly catalog, a personal favorite, and many more. So a massive thank you to Jennifer, Brent, and Amy for all of their teams for inventorying, conducting condition assessments, and preserving these titles. GPO will never be able to preserve the National Collection or make it fully accessible without our partners. The National Collection is simply too large for one institution to do it all. I hope I gave you some insight into the ways our partners help to preserve the National Collection, as well as to make it more accessible. For more information on GPO's official partnerships, please visit the partner page on fdlp.gov. There you'll find a complete list of all partners, a map of preservation stewards, guidance on each partner category, and copies of some of our agreements. And just a heads up about the partner page, the partnership team is currently renovating the page, so new and hopefully better pages will be available later this summer. I also want to encourage you to think about becoming a GPO partner. Partnerships don't need to involve contributing hundreds of digital files or preserving a large number of tangible titles. Partnerships can be to preserve a single title that is unique to your library or unique to Indiana. You can digitize just a few publications a year as well, as your time allows. So thank you for letting me talk about our great partners and how they're benefiting the National Collection and all users of government information. If this has given you any ideas for a potential partnership or just made you want to learn more about our partnership program, please reach out to me or to the partnership, anyone on the partnership team using Ask GPO. So I'd love to answer any questions that you have in the room or in the chat about partnerships or anything else at GPO, digitization, happy to answer anything. No, any questions in the room? Andrea and then Jennifer.
I know when lawyers get involved, things can kind of drag out, but about how long does it take for a process for a partner to be approved?
So the question was, what is the average length of time for development of a new partnership? It does vary. Probably like 3 to 4 months. So the first step is we always have an initial conversation with the partnership team. There's several of us at GPO, it's not just me, with the partner so that we can learn more about what they're doing and they have an opportunity to ask us questions. Then I develop a draft memorandum of agreement, which outlines those responsibilities. I send it to our general counsel. And as Andrea mentioned, lawyers take however long lawyers take. And then it goes to the partner for their administration to review and for their legal counsel to review. So generally the longest part of the process is that administrative review of the MOA. But 3 to 4 months on average. Jennifer?
I was wondering about the type of digital partnership, is it digital content contributor with the library to scan documents for ingest into GovInfo?
Yes.
So are there strict standards that need to be followed to be that type of partner? Like standards as far as the digitization goes?
Yeah, so the question was, what are the standards and specifications for being a digital content contributor? That is, you're scanning files and giving it to us for ingest into GovInfo. Yes, we have a guidance document on the partner page, which kind of goes into more detail on the types of preservation files. Those are the master files, which we would use to recreate the document if we had to. Our preference is JPEG 2000, which is a more recent preservation master file. We'll also take TIFF files if you're not able to do JPEG 2000 files, and we'll convert them to JPEG 2000 files because there's a big size difference. We do ask that you scan as close to the FADGI 3-star, which is 400 DPI in color as possible. Partners have to provide us test samples before we agree, and they're reviewed by our senior digital preservation librarian and our preservation librarian to be sure they meet the specs. But we're also happy to work with a partner if you're new to imaging to get you at the right place in order to contribute. David Walls, the preservation librarian, for instance, worked quite a bit with the University of Memphis when they became a digital content contributor because they had never scanned anything themselves. They just had the equipment. So he did a lot of consultation with them in order to be sure that they were able to do the right standards.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So the library then would scan and send you JPEG files, and then to go onto GovInfo, GPO, you all would convert it to PDFs. Is that how it works?
So the question was, is the partner just sending us the master files? Ideally, no. We would prefer that the library also send us a PDF A2B file with embedded OCR. And if they have it, a metadata, a MARC file. But if you're not able to do the PDF or the MARC, we can discuss it. Definitely if you don't have to give us the metadata file, we can do it ourselves. If we have to, it just increases the length of time between when you send us the files and when it goes up on GovInfo. But ideally, we would like that PDF A2B with embedded OCR. But if that's not something a library is able to do, we can certainly discuss it, and my team can create that if needed.
When new content is added to the congressional serial set, would it be possible for GPO to put out a press release, maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs long, saying what years are covered, what congressional sessions, and even mention noteworthy documents you think are in it? It seems it's been hard for me to track what logic has been used to submit or to post documents from the serial set.
Sure. The question was, when we make new content from the serial set available on GovInfo, could we issue some sort of news release or other information, because it'd be kind of hard to figure out why we're posting things. And I'm going to admit that there is no logic to how content is posted. We get the content from the law library. And then for anyone a lot of our metadata people in the room know that the scanning is probably the easiest portion of digitization. It's the metadata creation, which our catalogers have worked to save this great workflow and automated scripts in order to make it as easy as possible, because sometimes we'll have a batch of content from the law library and we have to create 27,000 bib records in order to make it accessible. So the workflow is that once we have the metadata, we make that volume available. But we can certainly discuss how we can better inform you all when maybe at regular intervals, because content goes up on an irregular basis. Maybe at regular intervals, quarterly or such, of what has been done in the last quarter. We do have a web page that gives stats, but that doesn't really tell you anything about the content. But we can think about maybe how we can add to that page, like highlight what was available, what interesting and cool stuff, what volumes were available that past quarter. Yep, Berlin?
When you mentioned the lawyering aspect of becoming a preservation steward, when your lawyers look at the MOU and then do you send it to the university and then their lawyer has to look it over, or is it that library that has to look it over?
So the question was about the review of the preservation steward MOA after the GPO attorneys have looked it over, who looks it over at the preservation steward library. There is in general, the preservation steward MOAs are basically all the same. There's just a different chart of what you're preserving and whether or not that item circulates at your library. And it's really up to you at the library who sees and reviews. I know Jennifer shook her head about lawyers, but I guess they're all lawyers at the law library, so they could skip that. So it's really up to your administration of who it is. And at state institutions, it may be your library dean or director who's signing it, but it may also have to be the provost. It kind of depends. Did I see a hand in the back earlier? Lou?
Some things were issued as, I'll give you the example of USGS bulletins, but they were also issued in the serial set. So does the metadata look into those sorts of double issued and provide the metadata so you can find it either way?
So the question was about content in the serial set. It has executive agency content within the serial set, such as USGS bulletins or annual reports of executive agencies. And does the metadata indicate that it is also an executive agency content? We have been doing that for serials. So if it is an annual report of the War Department, it's also got the War Department, it's got the W1.1 SUDOC number. It's a little bit more difficult for monographs, but so I don't think the USGS bulletins may or may not have a SUDOC number. Well, that's a serial. So they should have a SUDOC number. It's those random one-off monographs from executive agencies that got into the serial set that may not have an agency SUDOC number at this time. But once the digitization is complete, there's nothing to stop us from, as resources allow, to enhance that metadata content. Any questions in the chat? Okay. Yes.
Can you tell us more about who's on the team that does this collaboration?
Sure. So the question was, who else at GPO is on the team? The teams differ by type of partnership. Preservation stewards, it's Alicia Kubis, who's in Federal Depository Support Services. David Wells, our preservation librarian. Abby McDermott, our collection management librarian, and Keith Wade, who is a program and management support analyst who's on my team. For digital related partnerships with libraries. That is myself, Alicia Kubis, David Walls, and Abby McDermott, plus Jessica Tiemann, who is our senior digital preservation librarian. For partnerships related to agencies, we switch out Abby McDermott for Megan Minta, who is our collection development librarian. The others stay the same. So we're not a big team, but it's a great team. And I'm very happy to have all of them working on partnerships. That's the reason we're able to do as much as we can. Yes.
So Indiana University has a huge collection of early Department of Agriculture bulletin circulars. Most of them were issued as monographic series. But a lot of them were reissued over and over again, reprinted, updated. Is the National Collection committed to, eventually scanning all of those, making them all available, or is there a specific criteria on things that have been replaced and updated?
So the question was, is GPO planning to scan reprints and
Reprints or
updated editions of content? I think long-term, yes. Scott would like to add?
A little bit and say, you are perhaps the person who, among many of us in this room, understands the idea of editions, works, kind of sold on the model, but at some point, we're not gonna scan multiple instances of the same. But I will say, I had a specific request from my colleague back when I was doing a library. We need, the lawyer needs to see the 1973 printing of this, 1978 printing of this, brochure. That's good for us, but they were just a reprint as far as something heavily. So we need help differentiating what is a new edition. And we have an example of that in, sorry, you have to.
I'm going to repeat. So that was Scott Matheson, the superintendent of documents, also responding to the question, saying if it is an exact, just a reprint, nothing special, nothing added, we don't want to duplicate efforts. But if it isn't actually a new edition, then we do want to have that available because there is need for researchers and scholars to look at the differences. That we need to rely upon a lot of your expertise out in the community to tell us when those cases actually exist.
The reason that's important is there could be changes in laws, regulations, and scientific knowledge in that subject area.
Right. And that's just a follow-up from Bert Chapman, that there could be changes in law, regulation, and science, reflected in those revised editions that people need to know about.
So an example is our volume 18 issue with the statute.
So we're having an ongoing issue right now with this very issue with the statutes at large, which we just released last month, which completed the collection, except for part 1 of volume 18, which is a unique volume within the statutes collection. We're not able to acquire a first edition of volume 18, part 1. Parts 2 and 3 will be up very soon. Most people only have the reprint of part 1, which is not what we want. We did happen to, during a tour this morning at the State Library, Brett has part 1. It has offered to lend it to us, so hopefully we will resolve this. No? Okay. Yes.
Yes, so unless you're really sure, don't throw them out. Don't withdraw the documents.
That was just a reminder to people to check and verify before you discard things. I will note that our collection management and collection development librarians do monitor FDLP exchange for our needs list and for things not on our needs list, but they see it and they're like, we should take that. We might not see it again. So if you are weeding your collections as well, feel free to reach out to them through Ask GPO and let them know what you're planning to discard, so they can have a look. Additionally, not related to our digitization, but related to preservation stewards, Abby McDermott, the collection management librarian, is always looking out for things that are being discarded through exchange or through her other work that might fit a need at a preservation steward. So she tries to rehome things to preservation stewards. And GPO pays for the shipping if something is being rehomed to a preservation steward.
Just a reminder that in FDLP exchange, you can post needs as well as things that you're considering weeding.
And that was a reminder from Scott that you can also post needs in FDLP exchange as well as things that you are offering. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm sorry, just a comment. I really like the idea about posting some images or something really interesting about new releases. Because your slide is showing the Louisiana molasses thing. I mean, it really grabbed my attention, and I think it would really help the people in the field to kind of alert their users about, oh, this is really interesting. And that's what happened with the WPA posters, right? It's like all of a sudden, people want to use them.
Thank you, Andrea. That was a suggestion, kind of piggybacking on what was said earlier about us being a little bit more proactive in sharing screenshots and other cool facts about the neat stuff that we've been ingesting so that librarians know about it and can then share it with their users. Well, thank you all for coming today and listening to me talk about partnerships and for inviting me to Government Information Day. It has been a really great conference and I am glad that I was able to be here.